too long. What about 6 months? Okay, we can do Palm Pilots. Okay, Palm Pilots. Problem was, the use case was we're going to split the dinner tab, right, at a nearby restaurant. Problem, of course, is how many people have, I know no one has Palm Pilots now, but back in the day, even then, this was Palm Central. You go to every restaurant, between 0 and 1 table, it all have Palm Pilots. And that's when Max Levchin went, oh, email. Well, I can sync it through email. And we're like, oh, that's a good idea, right? Now, even with, PayPal had probably the best discipline I've ever seen in a company for pivoting. Even with all of the pivots that we did, they still ended up launching the Palm product because they'd already gone kind of halfway down that road. And it literally ended all the way to the point where we literally launched the product, had the product, was on the front page of Palm for a while, and then we closed it down because there was too much friction against what we were really trying to iterate and do, which was build a payments OS and first stay very close to the eBay market. Now, because the eBay market ended up being very contested because eBay had this thing called Bill Point, which was, earlier aforementioned competition, right, caused a really kind of locked-in war and to figure out how to win that one marketplace. Now, to give you a sense of how important kind of competition is, PayPal was accretive revenue per share in the first quarter after the acquisition by eBay. The only thing that they really did was they stopped trying to get everyone to stop using us, and they started saying, yeah, it's okay to use PayPal. And the volume went up by 40% in 1 quarter, right? So now that was a place where they own the marketplace, but the question of, there are structural impedance things around competition that you have to think through. How do you break through? How do you make that work as something very central? So, and so when you think about these hypotheses and you think about which of them, like what I actually encourage entrepreneurs to do is list them, to actually think through what does the world need to be like for my thing to work and also for me to be able to build to the mature place where I want my company to be. And which of these hypotheses are tricky and which of them can I test early? And test won't give you a binary result. It won't be yes, it works, no, it doesn't. But it will give you evidence in order to inform your judgment. And so that's a frequent way that I look at this stuff. So I think I'll say a few more comments on kind of things on the entrepreneurship side and then open for questions. So one of the things when you're looking at a very early, when you're looking at the company very early, the key thing is to build as much of a network around you as you can. Very few of these, part of what makes Silicon Valley go is that we actually spread a lot of how-to intelligence about, like, for example, what should the development release cycle look like? How do you do distribution online? For example, one of the things that's now gotten into the common parlance, but was one of the things that I was very early on in my angel investment saying, think about all of these things as game dynamics. Well, then everyone starts doing that. Everyone starts trading ideas and thinking about how to do that. So you want to build as much intelligence in your network around your company as you can. And whether or not that's from co-founders, hires, investors, advisors, the whole thing, all right? And for example, what Greg was saying about company building is exactly right. You want to build, as much assistance and intelligence around you as you can. Now, part of what that plays into is, I've been asked before, well, I have my great idea and I don't think other people have it. How many people should I tell it to? And the answer is, well, don't publish it until you've got your product launched, right? Don't publish it to the web because you don't get any intelligence back for that. That doesn't help you. But frankly, anyone that you think is possibly smart, that could possibly give you more insight in how to do what you're doing better, and that they'll talk to you, talk to them, right? Because every piece of intelligence you have in order to test your hypotheses, and this is part of the thing, is to fail fast, to go, oh, wait, maybe this won't work, maybe I need to adjust, is extremely important in getting into the race, because part of the consequence of it being much easier to start a consumer internet company, lower dollars, faster to do, is there's a lot more people doing it. There's a lot of other people running at it. And one of the talks I gave a couple years back at Cambridge University basically was like, look, why is it that Silicon Valley has so many consumer internet giants? given that, theoretically, the consumer internet's global. Right? You can have the servers anywhere, have the team anywhere, you can start anywhere. And the reason is, if you want to know how fast you should be moving, look around the room, right? See how fast other people are moving. And one of the benefits we have here in Silicon Valley that you don't have in Cambridge, England, or a large number of other places, is they don't see how fast people are innovating, how much they're thinking about it, how much they're trying to jump ahead in order to do stuff. And that's both frightening, right? But also compelling and a resource you can learn from in order to be here. So with that, that's kind of some opening remarks to try to get to potential questions, and I guess I'll pick out the questions.
Yeah, you pick out the questions and then repeat them.
Got it. Okay.
What gets you most excited about the vision for LinkedIn, say 1 to 3 years down?
So the question is, what gets me most excited about the vision for LinkedIn 1 to 3 years down the road? Well, the key thing, LinkedIn, the founding idea was that the whole nature of work is changing and every individual is essentially now a small business, and all the things that apply to a business apply to an individual. Some of those things are like brand, but also the things that we're talking about here in terms of business strategy come down to how an individual navigates their own work life, even on a daily and weekly basis. So like, for example, how do you get the business intelligence in order to be a more effective professional? What should you know about how to do your job better? How do you get the information, professionals solve problems? How do you get that information to solve the problem? What we've been working on in the last couple of years is a whole set of tools and platforms in order to enable professionals more that way. And hopefully we're getting to testing the right hypotheses over the next year, and that's the thing I'm most excited about. So the question is, how far ahead do you plan, especially giving pivoting and testing hypotheses? Well, it depends a little bit on the industry. I tend to specialize in consumer internet, and so generally speaking, I kind of have a chuckle if anyone's ever planning more than 6 months in advance. And when people ask me, what does the internet look like in 5 years? It's like, yeah, whatever, right? Who knows? Now, when you're doing different industries move at different clock speeds, right? So if you're doing hardware or semiconductors or comms or a number of other things, those, you have to have a much higher degree of certainty in terms of what you're doing, and you have to have much longer planning cycles, right? But generally speaking, on the consumer internet side, if you're thinking further, look, you should have an idea of like what we're building towards and what we could potentially get to in a year or two. But if you're really focused on something that you think is going to take longer than 3 to 6 months to deploy and get out there, especially at an early stage, that's very risky. You're betting the company on it, right? So, we're back.
You mentioned the contact report that was really critical to the growth of LinkedIn in the early days. I was wondering if you could mention any other factors that in the early 2 months were really important.
Well, so address book was very important. Or are there any other factors? Well, one of the factors, part of the reason why I didn't take a year off after I left PayPal, which was my original plan, was at the time there was a lot less happening on the consumer internet, and I thought it was a perfect time to start a consumer internet company. So the lack of competition was actually a valuable thing. That was actually the key decisive thing. Usually what happens in these things is one thing is really the thing that matters, and you keep hunting for that one thing. Now, a year or two later, we also realized that we felt that when the whole phenomena of Googling people was growing, or searching for people, but Google is still the dominant search engine, and we realized that most people would want their professional credentials found first if they thought about it, and so we launched the whole public profile part to be against the Google index. Now that was a year or two later. That was, I think, the January 2005, right? But that was also a valuable growth part of it, because we kind of looked at how the world was coming together.
So you're like one of the top sort of super angels now, micro VCs or real VCs.
I wear 3 hats.
But you're not someone who's super out in the community as much as some like guys like McClure and these others. And so, how do people get in contact with you? How do
Yep. So the question is, how do I participate in the ecosystem and how to reach me? And generally speaking, because one of the challenges, I spend Tuesday through Friday at LinkedIn still, right? So I'm an embedded entrepreneur. The best way to reach me is on a reference through somebody I know. I get probably about 30 to 50 emails per day with people pitching me on businesses, right? People I don't know, right? I can't even respond to them, right? I mean, it's actually embarrassing because it feels kind of rude, right? So through a reference is the right way to get to me. And the way that I stay involved is, the way I like to operate is I work with entrepreneurs. This is one of the reasons I love investing, and I've been doing this despite the fact that it's probably more rational for me in terms of the impact I can have in the world to only work on LinkedIn, is because I like working on these projects that can get to massive scale and have a really great impact on human ecosystems. And that's why I come and chat with you guys and all the rest of it. So, but a reference is the right way to get to me. In the front first.
Yeah, you talk about pivoting at PayPal, and I'm wondering what you think about the question of finding generally talented people and then coming up with an idea versus finding an idea and then finding people with specific talents that are relevant.
So the question is basically, if I interpret it the right way, is what are the right criteria in terms of hiring people early? And I think that you were partially answering the question the way that I would answer it, but if I haven't gotten this right, feel free to repeat. One of the things that I find is very important, especially in the consumer internet in terms of the early crew, is a high clock speed and learning cycle. Hiring for perfect expertise, now you need to have a base of expertise. Like, for example, hiring someone who doesn't know anything about coding and say, learn to code, it takes a while, right? But on the other hand, what's more central is most interesting startups are covering new ground, whether it's even in how the product is defined, the distribution mechanism for the product, frequently even certain parts of the architecture. And so you want a crew that coheres as a group and learns and acts quickly. And so it's that, like, part of, for example, what I'd learned